I live to the east of my place of work, so I don't have to go through central London to get here. But yesterday they closed off the entire area of Oxford Circus. They've been shutting down bits of Covent Garden, bits of Leicester Square. I mean, that's what we call the West End. I don't really go there very much, to be honest. If I was planning a lunch, I would definitely not go anywhere near Extinction Rebellion for fear that I might lash out at these useless individuals who have got no clue about anybody's actual life and certainly no clue about working people.
My partner was making the evil suggestion yesterday that the way to treat the ones who've glued themselves to buildings is just to get several buckets of ice water and walk down the line and toss the ice water over.
Well, I've often said, I mean,
And
the
I'm
ones
going, you're a very naughty person.
yeah, but I mean, I would not hesitate to do something like that. Also, the ones who glue themselves to trains, I'd be like, that's fine. We'll just keep the trains moving. You know, you can glue yourself to the roof of a train if you like, but it's going to get a bit tricky when it hits the tunnel.
But I mean, they're just, look, posh people playing at being poor and posh people playing at being oppressed has been one of the signature characteristics of quite a lot of the protests that have happened. When you get this pale imitation in the UK of conflicts, political conflicts that occur in the United States. And we all noticed that, I mean, once again, a little joke from my partner about, can I start making jokes about, you know, which is whiter, an Extinction Rebellion protest or a Black Lives Matter protest?
Well, I mean, I'm
You
sure
know, they're
that would
both
be,
awfully white.
I'm
The
sure
one
that
that
would be
was very
fine.
diverse, yeah, the one that was actually very diverse was the anti-lockdown protest. They were all the colours of the rainbow.
Well, exactly right. There's nothing worse than an outraged middle-class champagne socialist.
Yes, and I do think those criticisms are legitimate. Hypocrisy is fatal to any individual who makes moral claims of this sort. And people are thinking, and anyone who thinks, oh, well, Extinction Rebellion, they got caught out owning diesel cars or flying on private jets and just generally being environmental wastrels and behaving in a way that, I mean, I'm not any sort of particular greenie, although I do support conservation like red squirrels and things like that, but certainly behaving in ways that I would never do because they're wasteful. And what you need to remember is what happens, for example, I mean, we've got Afghanistan in the news at the moment with all these people claiming to be sincere Muslims and at the same time supporting terrorism or women being driven back into the home and so on and so forth. So you've got that problem. It makes the entire religion look bad. And Rakib Asan, I'm not quite sure how to say his name, has been on your show any number of times and has made this point, and he is a sincere Muslim, you know, so they know how they look. Right. And you get the same problem in the Catholic Church. You have people getting up and trying to tell other people how to behave in their moral behavior, you know, don't be gay or don't be you know, don't have an abortion and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. And then you had over many decades, you've got the same problem as you have with Islam. You had all this kiddie fiddling. And it's just impossible to take seriously. And with Extinction Rebellion, I mean, if you are a massive climate change skeptic and think it's all a load of hooey and use the Nasib Nicholas Taleb argument that it's not possible to forecast the future in a complex system, if you take that seriously, looking at Extinction Rebellion completely fouling the nest of their own cause must make you secretly happy.
Well, it must do,
I'm
because,
sure
I mean, the question was being asked yesterday, why is it that Extinction Rebellion are having such little cut-through to the general population? And because, of course, it hasn't helped them either, that all of the so-called strides that have been made by the British government were completely castigated by Greta Thunberg the other day, who said it was all lies and it was all about clever carbon accounting. Now, I didn't even know what carbon accounting was until about 3 years ago, but it shows you that no matter what you do, no matter what you try to do, these extremists will say whatever it is, it's not enough, and you need to do more.
It's not enough,
and they now also have become quite belligerent about the cause as such, and they talk about the science as though it's all provable science, which of course it isn't.
And the thing is, even if you take their claims at the absolute highest, I take Zion Lights' point. You don't actually care about climate change unless you concede that the only solution to, let's put their claims at the highest, at the high end of the range, which even the IPCC doesn't go into. Even if you put their claims at their highest, all of this is insoluble without nuclear. and to nuclear power, and to the extent that they remain opposed to nuclear, and I think it's significant that Zion Lights had to leave the organisation, then none of what they say is worth tuppence.
No, it isn't.
I'm sorry, it is not worth tuppence.
And also, whenever they now are folded into a chair, as they so often are in any kind of intellectual argument, because their arguments are so specious, they basically say, well, we've got to start somewhere. We've got to lead the way. Whenever anybody mentions China to them, they go, well, we've got to lead the world. This latest nonsense that they come out with is that we should now own all of China's emissions because it's our fault that China's making things on our behalf that we buy. Therefore, we should add their emissions to ours to make it show that we are actually not doing very well at all.
I've heard this argument in the past, actually. That,
what a load of rubbish.
Yeah, it's just nonsense, directed at developing countries, saying you're not allowed to use the technology that was first developed in Western countries for them to industrialise. And I don't think that they quite realise what this argument means. Now, you can dislike the Chinese government, the People's Republic of China. It's an authoritarian state. It's not really communist. It's just, they've really left the communism behind, but they're horribly authoritarian. We've seen that in the response to coronavirus. We've seen it in the way they treat the Uyghurs and religious minorities in their country. I mean, you raise your fist against Xi Jinping and you get stomped on in China. All of that. So I'm not making excuses for the Chinese government. I'll foreground that here. But you cannot, in good conscience, go around and tell developing countries with vast numbers of their population historically in poverty, in the case of China, that a lot of them have been pulled out of it, or a country like India, which is currently going through the same process that China did, but 10, 15 years ago, where its population is coming out of poverty as a result of industrialization. You cannot do that in good conscience. I'm sorry. And people who do are just alarming, especially when they say, oh, the way to make up for it is with aid from Western countries, when we now know that aid is notoriously a form of modern imperialism, where they turn up in developing countries and tell everybody there how to live, basically.
That's right. And now, of course, their latest manoeuvre, because they've worked out that some of them may, in fact, have been exposed as hypocrites, notably that woman who was on with Christo the other day who drives a diesel car.
Oh, the diesel,
yes. They've now got a new mantra, which is, well, of course, we're all hypocrites. We will just have to do what we can. And you go, well, sorry, that's not really acceptable to me either, because you spent the best part of the last 4 years telling us all how horrible we are for flying anywhere, how dreadful we are for driving, how we shouldn't do anything other than walk or cycle, how we shouldn't eat meat because it's damaging the planet. They've now sort of tried to soften their approach, I think, because I think they've worked out that they're not actually cutting through to anybody.
They've worked out that hypocrisy is fatal. Now, yes, the claim that everyone is a hypocrite, at least some of the time, is true. It's trivially true, as lawyers often say. We're all hypocrites. I'm a hypocrite and you are.
No, I'm not.
But,
I refuse to accept that, Helen. I'm definitely not a hypocrite. I'm one of the very few people, actually, in public life, if you call it that, rather pompously, who's not a hypocrite, because I do not ever tell anybody what they should be doing. I do not tell people how to live. I can be critical of them. I can say to you, I think you've done something wrong and stupid, therefore you're an idiot. But it doesn't make me a hypocrite because I don't do the same thing that I tell other people not to do. Yeah.
Okay, that's...
I drive a diesel car. I don't care about saving the planet.
Fair enough. But so that trivially true claim is there for a lot of us, at least. I mean, I'm sure there are times in my life when I've handed out advice, perhaps even as a solicitor, and then not upheld it myself.
Yes.
I'm willing to concede that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure I have. Now, the problem with that, though, is that there is a difference between a trivially true claim of hypocrisy.
Yes.
Oh, don't say advising someone don't steal from the employer and then walking out of the office with a company pen in your hand, that kind of thing. That's trivially true.
Yes.
But by the same token, we're not dealing here with little trivialities. We are dealing with people zipping around on private jets, driving diesel cars that are known to be damaging. And we all remember the Volkswagen emissions scandal, where they were doing the classic virtue signal and trying to make themselves look better than they actually were.